Hello, everyone, and welcome back. As always, I'm your girl, Candy Washington. So, before we dive into today's episode, which is really talking all things Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, we just had season 5, episode 12, Mazel Meredith, and we'll also be talking about the seating chart for the upcoming reunion. Are we happy with it? Are we not? Angie's activated. Bronwyn is two-faced and is exposed as being a liar. Mary comes out being very vulnerable with her son and more. So before we dive in, go ahead and like, subscribe, and share. So with that, let's dive right on in. So if you guys are watching live, be sure to say hi in the chat box, comment where you're watching from, who's your favorite, and if you're watching on the replay, also comment in the comment section. I want to hear your thoughts, whether you agree or disagree, who's your favorite snowflake, and more. Okay, so let's talk about the seating chart. So we have, obviously, Mr. Andy Cohen. Hi, Tay-Tay, how are you, sweetheart? So, of course, we have Mr. Andy Cohen in the middle, and then we have the first two seats are Angie and Lisa. I mean, of course, we're going to have Lisa Barlow because basically everybody had her name in their mouth this season and tried to either take down Lisa or befriend her. So she was the it girl of the season, Avi. Then we have Mary. And I think the reason why we have Mary after Angie is because she opened up about her son and his struggles and how that resonated with everyone so much. So I think that really boosted up Mary's position in the group because if for not that, I'm not sure she would be so far up. Yes, we had a new Mary this season, but I don't think we had enough of going on with Mary without what happened with her son, which again is so, amazing to share all that and probably really helped a lot of people. Now, let's talk about Angie being across from Lisa Barlow. You guys know, and you don't have to agree, I don't like Angie. I think she's really mean. I think she's mean. I think she's nasty and so rude. But she's one of those types of people that she plays like she's like, oh, I'm like a doormat, I'm really codependent, I'm a people pleaser, I just shut down. She plays like she's that person, but I think underneath that, she's very resentful and spiteful and bitter and mean. Look what she did to Lisa. She turned on Lisa like a frick on a dime with Whitney, talking about Lisa like a dog and her parenting skills and everything else, but yet she can't take it. She's also the type of person that she can say whatever she wants to say about you, and then you say one thing about her, and you're the most horrible person in the world. How dare you say something about her? I'm not an Angie fan. I think she's a low-key sniper from the side. And I think she's actually like really mean and very nasty. Like the stuff she says isn't nice. That's just how I feel. But of course, I want to know what you guys think about that. Okay, now what do you guys think about Heather now being behind Lisa? Do we think Heather has earned that spot? But don't forget, there's still a bunch of episodes left of this season. So maybe this chart is indicative of what happens on the trip. Where are they going to, like Puerto Vallarta or Puerto Rico? I forgot where they're going, but they're going on their cast trip. It's Lisa Barlow's girls' trip. So maybe a lot happens on the trip that is informing this chart, you know? So there's that. So, because I'm wondering, like, why would they put Heather above Meredith? But then again, Meredith doesn't get a lot of screen time. She really doesn't. Porta Varta, thank you so much. She doesn't get a lot of screen time. Now, Bronwyn over here being after Mary, to be honest with you, other than Mary talking about her son, I would think that Bronwyn, and I don't like Bronwyn, I think that Bronwyn should go above Mary only because as a first time snowflake, even though I don't rock with her like that, Bronwyn has been in all of the mess. She was beefing hard with Heather. She was beefing hard with Lisa. She was up Whitney's butt, and now she's beefing with Whitney because she flipped on her. She was up Angie's butt, but now she's beefing with Angie because she flipped on her. She has her so nasty, so rude, so cold, so mean husband, Mr. Todd. So she hosted a girls' trip to Palm Springs. So Bronwyn has been in the mess. She's been in the mess. So I'm shocked that she is coming after Mary. But again, I think the stuff with Mary's son really gave her that boost up. Okay. Now, Whitney, you played yourself. You are dead last. You are behind the newbie. You are dead last because you made your entire storyline, your entire season about trying to expose Lisa Barlow as the person behind, people finding out that you are selling not counterfeit jewelry, but you're selling, you know, Alibaba, AliExpress, $1 a pair jewelry, and then you're slapping your logo on it, and then you're charging people 40, 50, 60, 70, $100 for jewelry that turns their skin green. I'll say alleged because we know Whitney is psycho and unhinged, and I don't want her coming after me. And it turned out that your little buddy up in Adam flipped on you on a dime because he was like, look, I'm not about to be sued by Lisa Barlow. And the block is hot. I was gonna have your back and come on your show and say what you wanted to say, but the moment the block got hot, Adam flipped on you and was like, it was never Lisa Barlow. I never told you it was Lisa Barlow. That all that in the car, that was just editing. It was Bravo. It wasn't me. I never said it. He was like, it wasn't me. Okay. And so you got what you got. Also, I think with what's going to happen with their trip, it's going to be revealed how Whitney reached out to Monica for information, probably on Lisa, probably information on Heather too, information on Meredith and everybody else. And it's like, how dare you reach out to Monica, the group's sworn enemy, to try to take down another housewife. Like, that is so dirty and nasty, but are we surprised? Are we shocked? Like, that's just who Whitney is. She's nasty and she's dirty and she's down in the gutter. And that's why she's at the bottom of the barrel, because not only do I think the fans are tired of Whitney, but clearly production is tired of her too, and that's why they put her at the bottom. You know what I mean? And as they say, when you're on the bottom, you're kind of fighting for your spot. Sorry, I'm just drinking a little bit of tea. Because that means that you are at the bottom of the totem pole, and then we have Brittany, and I'm surprised. Is Brittany even a full-time snowflake holder? Like, I don't think so. No, she's not even a full-time snowflake holder. But, Brittany's on the chart right after Meredith. Like Brittany, Brittany, to me, it's not that I don't like Brittany. She's like, whatever. She's kind of a joke, to be honest with you. The whole thing with the Osmond cousin was absolutely ridiculous. You are a full-grown woman out here getting played like a fool. You, on camera, publicly said out of your mouth that you prioritized a man over your own children. Like, it doesn't get dumber than that. It doesn't get more pathetic than that you would have the audacity to sit up here. And this is the thing, because let me take that back real quick. Well, no, I'm not going to take it back because I stand by it, but let me preface it with this. It would be one thing if Brittany said, I was at a low point in my life and I was really struggling and I made very bad decisions and I chose a man over my children. However, I deeply regret it. And now I am doing everything in my power to make it right with my kids. That would have been one thing. That would have been some grown woman stuff. And I would support that because we're human beings, and especially as women. I'm not a mother, but just as women and mothers in particular, the bar is so high. You're expected not to be human. You're expected to sacrifice your life, your happiness, everything that makes you a woman, your sexuality, everything for your kids. And I don't think that's right. That's wrong. You're not supposed to sacrifice your humanity and your womanhood for your children. Number one, you're doing your children a disservice. And number two, your life has meaning beyond just your kids. Your life is meaningful too. Does that mean that your daughter's life has no meaning once she becomes a woman and it's only for children? No. You would want your children to have full lives, so you should have a full life too. However, with that being said, not to get too much on a tangent, I think it's very dangerous how Brittany was like, yeah, like I still want to be happy and I want to date and blah, 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 blah. Those are two different things. When you choose to date toxic men, have unhealthy relationships at the detriment of your children, then you're an awful person. Then you're an awful mother. But just because you are a woman who happens to be a mother and you still have a full-fledged life of your own, but not to the detriment of your children. Those are two different things. And that's why I don't like Brittany. And that's why I don't rock with her. However, when it comes to her beef with Bronwyn, I'm team Brittany because Bronwyn, and this is so funny, right? Because we remember how we were saying how Bronwyn is weird and she has a weird energy and a weird vibe, and she kind of talks like she's in a musical and she's about to fly away and she's doing a play and she's like, you guys, this is my new thing and blah 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 blah, and she gave very like theater kid energy. Remember we were saying how she gives like weird theater kid energy? Not that theater kids are weird, but you know what I mean. Tell me why in the after show, because you know how Bronwyn threw Brittany under the bus this episode. I'll explain. I'll give that first, and then I'll talk about what happened on the after show. So, in this episode, we know Meredith has her bat mitzvah, which is really cool and great. And then we have Bronwyn, who is now pissed at Whitney and pissed at Angie. She's pissed at Whitney because Whitney, the episode before, hosted the event with Heather. And this is the thing, Bronwyn, that you got to learn real quick. Whitney never liked you. She used you because you were so quick and you were so willing to stab Lisa Barlow in the back. She didn't like you. She used you. She talked about Heather like a dog to you. Oh, she was saying, oh, Heather's fake. Heather wants to be Lisa's friend so much that she's a bad friend to me. She's a bad friend to Angie, blah, 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 blah. That you took the bait. You actually believed that Whitney would take your side because that's what gave you so much bravado to beef with Heather. Because you and Whitney and Angie were talking about Heather and talking about Lisa like a dog. And so you actually thought these chicks liked you and had your back. No, they used you to go against other chicks they didn't like. So when Whitney and Heather got back together, bad weather. Sorry, I had to go there. And through the event, you lost your mind. And so you're like, well, I'm going to spill the tea. Whitney was talking about you, Heather, blah, blah, blah. And also, this is the gag, Bronwyn. Heather knows exactly what Whitney was saying about her. And Heather doesn't care. She knows who Whitney is. She knows Whitney is two-faced as hell. She knows Whitney is jealous of Lisa. She knows Whitney is jealous of her friendship with her. She knows that. She doesn't care. And at the end of the day, she likes you less than she likes Whitney. So she would, even if she did care, she wouldn't care because she would not turn on Whitney based on your word, Bronwyn, because you've been beefing with her this entire season. And you chose not to invite Heather. Whether you like Heather or not, she is a staple of the show. She is. Whether you like her or not, you got to admit that Heather is a staple of the show. She is. And so you decided not to invite OG Heather on the trip like you had it like that. And then you think that just because you expose Whitney talking crap about her, she's going to flip on Whitney and take your side. You bumped your head all three types of ways to Sunday, sweetheart. And then with Angie, now you're mad at Angie because now Angie and Lisa made up and made friends. You thought you had, an ally in Angie. Both of you are two friends of Lisa who the entire time was low-key jealous of her. So the moment you had an opportunity to take Lisa down a peg or two, you took it. And now you're pissed at Angie because you thought she hated Lisa just like you did. But now she's back buzzies with friends. And that's why Angie told you to shut the F up about 25 times because you were spilling how much crap they were talking about them. Now, this is a thing, Bronwyn. You can say all you want. Oh, I just sort of listened and just said, oh, well, I don't know. No. If you are my friend and you are in the company of people who talk so poorly about me over and over and over again, and you chime in here and there, you are just as guilty as they are. Just as guilty. And that's why she got so butthurt when Angie went back to Lisa and Whitney went back to Heather, the way they always were going to be, and you were left out to dry. Also, with that, okay, so to say all that, now let's get back to the episode, right? So then, when Brittany and Angie are having their little beef, right? Because at Mary's dinner, the episode before, when Angie was like, "Oh, Brittany, like you're doing three different guys," or wherever they said that, whatever event that was, you're doing three different guys and blah, 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 which was really, again, that's why I don't rock with Angie. That's a really nasty, rude thing to say. Like slut shaming somebody. Forget the whole hair monologue she did. Oh, you have, high body count. Like, shut up, Angie. But to shame somebody for who they're dating and who they're sleeping with, and to be honest with you, like when Brittany was like, "Is that what you and Sean do?" I was like, "Go, Brittany, go. You tell her." Because if you're gonna talk about how many men that Brittany is allegedly sleeping with, then turnabout is fair play. You can't be all up in arms and be all upset when then she then says, "Well, how many men are you and your husband sleeping with then?" You can't be up in arms about that. You can't play victim. You can't have it both ways. You can't try and slut shame her and demean her about her own sexuality and what she chooses to do or not to do with her own body, and then act like you and your husband are off limits. You're not. You never should have came at her like that if you couldn't take it. You know what I mean? And so it was that whole thing. And Brittany had confided in Mealy, I think her name is, and in Bronwyn. And they're like, "I can't believe we're friends, blah, 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 blah. I hope we're friends for like a minute. Da, 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 da." And then the moment Bronwyn had the opportunity to turn, and this is why Heather was spot on about Bronwyn. She was like, "She's two-faced. I don't trust her, and she's fake and she's phony." The moment she had the opportunity, what did she do? She ran to Angie. And when Angie and Brittany were having their little beef at the bat mitzvah, and was like, "Oh," and she whispers to her, she goes, "Brittany said, that you are calling her a slut because you're a slut, and what happens with you and your husband." Literally within the same hour, you flipped on this chick. And then in the confessional, she was laughing about it. Like, "Well, she said she wanted to be friends for a hot minute. I gave her 5." And it's like, Bronwyn, this is why Lisa couldn't actually say to you, "I don't think you're two-faced." This is a literal example of why Heather said the same thing about you, that you're not to be trusted. You say one thing to my face, and then the moment I'm out, you say another thing. So you're trying to act like everybody's coming at you, Bronwyn, when they're right. You are two-faced as hell. You are. And then going back to how we were saying how she has that weird like theater kid energy. This is I mean, I scare myself sometimes. I have like goosebumps. So I was watching the after show, and Lisa and Brittany were talking about how Bronwyn had turned on her. And they brought up and then Lisa brought up the fact, or either Brittany brought up the fact, how she knew Bronwyn didn't like Brittany because Bronwyn was saying, "Oh, Brittany's lying about being on Broadway." And that she produces Broadway shows. And then Brittany was like, "Well, she's lying because I've had conversations with her off camera where she told me she knew I was on Broadway." And you know me, I'm messy, nosy boots. Brittany is the one who is telling the truth. Brittany was on a national Broadway tour for Miss Saigon. So she was on Broadway. She was. So that explains why Bronwyn was so eager and quick to flip on Brittany when Brittany had done nothing to Bronwyn, because she was jealous that she was on Broadway. Like, how cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs is this Bronwyn chick where, because Brittany was on Broadway like 20 years ago, like literally like 2 decades ago, she was hating on her that hard And she was like, well, she should come and, audition for me because I actually produce Broadway shows. It's like, you are that weird theater kid. Like, I was just saying that's the energy you have, but like, it turns out you really are. Like, you're jealous. She was like, I can't sing or dance, but, I can tell you she's exaggerating. Brittany wasn't exaggerating because I Googled it and you can see clips of her from Broadway. I saw them. So Bronwyn was just lying the entire time, which was so, so, so crazy. Bronwyn's a weirdo. But there's that. I love seeing more of Meredith on this episode. It was basically like her dedicated episode. Who knew that she had 3 children? I guess she has her older son who's very private. He lives in New York, so he doesn't want to be on the show. I thought that was really cool to see him and like all of that. I thought it was really cool to see her heritage and her religion and being bat mitzvah. I thought that was really cool. Mary showing up late. I don't know what it is, but I didn't think that was funny. I thought that was really rude and disrespectful, only because it was a religious ceremony. If it was just like a brunch or like a party, that's okay. But I loved how Meredith like fake cried long enough so for Mary to get seated so she could start her speech without being overshadowed or disrupted. I was like, you're the MVP for that. Now, how do you guys feel about Meredith throwing Angie out of her bat mitzvah? I personally loved it. This might be an unpopular opinion, but I loved it. Because again, I think Angie and her weasel husband, they're one of the same. They say really nasty things about people. They throw a lot of digs. And then the moment you say one thing back to them, they play victim. Oh my God, I can't believe you said this. Oh my God, I can't believe you did that. And her husband did talk about Meredith's son, Brooks. Because remember a couple episodes ago when he was like, booyah, biatch, and he had the whole thing and on the podcast? He did, because at first Sean or Shane, whatever his name is, lied and was like, I don't know what you're talking about. What? I didn't say anything about your kid. And then when Meredith's husband Seth got the receipts out, all of a sudden he was quoting the podcast and being like, oh, it was like the word leverage, or it was some, and that might not be the specific word. It was like you leverage your son or something like that. But he knew the exact terminology. And then all of a sudden he was quoting from the podcast. So it was like you didn't know what he was talking about. But then when he showed the proof, you were quoting from it. You did. And like, I'm sorry, dude, but like, don't bring someone's child into it and then play victim because they're calling you out for it. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. If somebody said something about Electra, I'm pretty sure Angie and her husband would lose their minds. But you want to talk about Brooks and his sexuality? And I get he is quote unquote an adult, but like we always said, kids are off limits. He may not be a child, but he's her child. And if somebody says something about their daughter, they would lose it too. And that's really what my issue is with Angie and her husband. They're very, very hypocritical. They play victim. They play like, oh, we're so cool and nice, and and we're just over here in our little corner. But when you really listen to them and watch how they move, they're nasty and they're rude. And I don't know. That's just me. Now, when it comes to, let's see here, Whitney to me is a non-factor. She basically wasn't even in this episode. So whatever, Whit, you're a non-factor. Bronwyn, we know, has been exposed to be the liar and weirdo that she is. Mary, okay, I'm going to touch on 2 things with Mary. The first thing I'm going to touch on is her beef with Meredith. I think the only reason why Mary is beefing with Meredith is because she's trying to prove her allegiance to Angie. Because as we know, Angie and Meredith beef all the time. I think it's kind of wrong of Mary and very shady of her because nobody has ever had Mary's back other than Meredith. when Mary was very much not iced out of the group, but just not a part of the group, Meredith was there for her. They had a friendship. And then all of a sudden, you want to, go against Meredith and stuff. Why? Because now you're a new BFF Angie? Like, I think that if Angie didn't beef with Meredith, Mary would not treat Meredith the way she does. And I don't like that. Don't get brand new on me as a friend just because now you're buddy with another chick who doesn't like me. That to me is some fake stuff. So when it comes to Mary versus Meredith, I'm definitely team Meredith. The other thing I'll say about Mary is I'm really happy that not happy, but you know what I mean. I think it's really good that her and her son had that conversation on camera. The critic in me is like, would she have had that conversation and been so honest if her son hadn't been arrested and going through the legal stuff? Because, and this is no shade to Mary, and this is not a judgment to her. This is not even a criticism to her or her son, because housewives and reality stars and celebrities, they do this all the time. The moment they get into some type of trouble, all of a sudden they want to do a paparazzi photo shoot. All of a sudden they want to do, they want to come clean and have heart to hearts. So I am by no means criticizing Mary and her son for this, because people do this all the time. I just thought, I wonder if we would be seeing this if it were for not his legal troubles and they're trying to create sympathy and a narrative around that. And I'm not judging that, because people, celebrities and reality stars do it all the time. So I'm not judging that. Whether that is true or not, I think it's good that they had that conversation, because that could save someone's life. Someone who might be struggling with substance, someone who might be struggling with, no longer wanting to be here, a parent struggling with a child. So regardless of the intentionality behind it, I think it's good that they had that conversation, because it could save someone. And it seemed very real, and it did seem very raw. So, and just prayers out to her son, to her sons. And it seemed like to me, I don't know why I think this, but I feel like her son's wife, or whoever that girl is, turned him out. Like, I feel like she's the one that got him on all the stuff. I feel like she really turned him out. And because even on the Watch What Happens Live, they were talking about how the son went to rehab and he did a really good job and he completed his program. And Mary was like, well, yeah, and his wife is like still in the program, like she's still in rehab. I don't know why I felt that. And again, you can't ever blame anybody else for your addiction or your abuse. If you get addicted to something, it's your responsibility to get off of it. We can't ever blame other people for the decisions that we make, but there is something to be said about who influenced you to get to that point. And I don't know why, but I always thought it was that girl that got him hooked on stuff. I don't know why. Again, that's just what I thought in my head. It is what it is. So let's see. Heather was cute, in this episode. She didn't do too much. She didn't do too little. She was a beat. She was a bop. It was what it was. Again, I loved Meredith. Brittany, I agree with Lisa. You could use a keratin, treatment on your hair, but that's okay, girl. And I'm kind of neutral on Brittany, like I was saying earlier. The whole thing with the Osmond is corny to me. The parenting stuff was corny to me. But I don't think she deserves all the smoke she gets from like Bronwyn and Angie. Like, why are you mad at her? Why are you calling this woman a slut? Why are you saying she's doing 3 different men? Like, why? Like, what did Brittany do to these women? Like, Brittany's annoying because she's talking about this guy who's playing her for a fool, but I don't think that equates to being that mean to her. You can kind of clown her for it, but I don't get the meanness behind it, other than Bronwyn being jealous that she was on Broadway, because Bronwyn's a weirdo. Oh, and did you guys see? Listen. And did you guys see how so Bronwyn and her husband are being sued? Allegedly, their dogs, as we know, poop all over the place. But anyway, her dogs allegedly like bit and attacked some guy, either like a postal worker or like a messenger guy or something like that. And so he's suing them for like hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think the incident happened, I want to say in like 2016 or something. And then it came out in the lawsuit how Bronwyn and Todd were basically living separate lives. Like they would live in different states, they would live in different houses for years. Sort of how now she talks about how he travels like 5 days out of the week and everything. And then on the after show, Angie was saying how her and her husband put their house on the market and they wanted to show it to Todd. And basically, how like Todd was going to buy, like if he bought their house, he would buy it for him. And then Bronwyn could stay at their house down the street. Like trouble in paradise. And then we've seen like the previews how Bronwyn's like, you want to talk about my husband? Then let's talk about like what I've really gone through with him. And all the girls are like, what? What have you really gone through with him? So, I mean, yikes. And I say that like I always wonder, even with like Meredith and Seth, although I think Meredith and Seth at this point it's more of an arrangement slash agreement where it's just like we're married, we have kids, we have our businesses, and we're best friends. It's just easier to stay married, but like you do you and I'll do me. Because I always squint at marriages or long-term relationships where one partner is always gone, always traveling. Like it's just human nature, you know. There's always the exception to the rule, but I think more often than not something's up. If your partner is gone for 5 days out of the week or weeks on end or months on end, traveling, working, come on. That's not, you know what I mean? And so in the lawsuit, it came out that like she was living in one house, he was living in another. Sometimes they live in like different states. Because remember, he works in New York and Tokyo and all over the place. Also, it came out on this, and then this was on the after show. It came out how Angie was saying how Todd doesn't like the remodel of their Utah house. And remember how I was saying it's very, very weird how they have all of this money and all of this privilege and all of this access, but they haven't furnished their house. And they also let the dogs poop everywhere. I would be pissed if I was Todd too. If I have millions and millions of dollars, why is my house not furnished? Why is there dog crap everywhere? I would be pissed too. But also, Todd, you could hire a cleaner, you could hire an interior designer, you could get a pooper scooper. But to me, that's more about if you have all this money and your house is full of dog poop and unfurnished, that to me is more of a mental thing, an emotional thing. Something isn't right there. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm not saying they don't have money and they're frauds. I'm not saying that. Because I don't know. Nothing like that has come out about them. They allegedly have all this money in multiple homes and private jets and all of that stuff. So if your money isn't funny, why don't you have furniture and why is your house full of dog crap? So if it's not about the funny money, it has to be mental, emotional. And so they were saying how like Todd would buy the house for him and leave Bronwyn in the other. Like it just seems like it's a hot mess. And then also the conversation how Todd is like, you know, Gwen is not going to see her grandparents. They're some horrible people, not going to happen, blah, blah, blah. Some people were like, oh, he's so protective. I was like, no, he's so controlling. That to me is control, not protection. If the biological grandparents and if Gwen wants a relationship with them, what's the problem? It doesn't seem like these people are abusive. They're good friends with Lisa Barlow. Seems like 20 years ago, they had a very poor lapse in judgment, which unfortunately a lot of people have a lot of bad social conditioning where there's shame around a woman getting pregnant out of wedlock, especially within their Mormon community, and they had a really bad reaction to it. I totally get that. And I'm not negating how Gwen must have felt and how Bronwyn must have felt. I'm not negating that by any means or minimizing that traumatic experience, feeling like you're being shunned and not accepted because you got pregnant while not being married. I get that. However, Gwen is now 17, 18 years old. Her father has passed away. He died. And people change, people grow, people evolve. So are you just going to never just if they are like, you know what, we were wrong and we're sorry, we want to make up for it, we want you in our lives, our son is dead and you are his daughter and we want a relationship with you, who the hell is Todd to say no to that? The man who isn't even there? You say you're a father figure, but according to the legal documents, you and Bronwyn weren't even living in the same house or state for years during your 8-year marriage. So how present were you for her daughter? You see what I'm saying? So I just think there's just a lot going on that's not making sense. Like the math isn't mathing, things aren't coming together. I think more things are going to come out about it. And the thing with Bronwyn is I think I would like her more if she wasn't so I don't know what the word is. Weird and insecure, but acts like she's confident and sassy. Like those are the worst type of people. Like the worst. But that's just sort of how I feel about everything. And that's kind of what happened. Now, I will tell you this. I'm excited about the upcoming episodes of the season. I think they're going to be juicy. I think they're going to be good. I'm ready to see the nitty-gritty of what happens with Whitney and Heather and the Monica of it all. I'm excited to see what's going to happen with Bronwyn and spilling the tea about her relationship with Todd, the whole like, "Oh, let me tell you what I really go through with him." Also, who put the recording device in Meredith's room? Because remember, she gets really pissed off and she's like, I think they're like on a Sprinter van or something. And she's like, "You record your friends." I think she was talking to Angie. And now that makes sense given the fact that Angie was kicked out of her bat mitzvah, that Angie would go that low to put a recording device in Meredith's bedroom. Because when I first saw that, I was like, why would somebody like what? Like I know Angie and Meredith beef, but like it's not that deep anymore, is it? But I think Angie now will be out for blood. And that might also be why she's sitting across from Lisa. Not that she did it to Lisa, but being so close to Andy, maybe she did do that. Now, what do you guys think about that? If it turns out that Angie put a recording device in Meredith's room, isn't that kind of horrible and awful and a breach of privacy? I don't know, but we know something really big goes down because they break the fourth wall. And the producers are like, "Do you think you can come back from this?" And they're all like, "There's no coming back from this, blah, 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 blah." So they do break the fourth wall. We know that happens. And we know everybody is like really upset. I don't know if it's about the Angie recording device with Meredith, if it's about the Whitney and the Monica Garcia of it all. Who knows? But I think it's going to be really good. And I think it's going to be really, 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 really juicy. Tay Tay says, I think Brittany is the one who recorded Meredith. Ooh, if it's Brittany, that's even worse. Because why would Brittany record Meredith when Meredith had her back at the bat mitzvah and kicked out Angie because she was basically like, "Girl, you look like you sleep with a lot of men. Your hair is trash and you're doing Tom, Dick, and Harry." So wow. Wow. Yeah, and Barbara says it's against the law. So we'll see. We'll see. So that's kind of how I feel about this season so far. Last night's episode, also with the seating chart. What do you think about the seating chart? Do you think this is about right? Who would you replace? Who would you move around? And are you like me, and are you super excited for the upcoming the rest of the season? I think it's going to be really good. So stick around, my candy canes. I will drop the link in case anybody wants to come up, and then I will take your candy cane questions and comments. But before I do that, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Yay! All right, you guys, I'll drop the link in case anybody wants to come up, but as always, absolutely no pressure. Only come up if you want to. All right.